Lights, camera, action. Day 76 of 365 days of meditation. Today's practice was, I don't know. I don't know if it was like 50 minutes long or an hour and 10 or so. I kind of didn't pay attention before I sat down, but let's call it an hour-ish. Not a lot to report from the meditation itself. Although afterwards I was listening to some interesting content about both obsessive compulsive disorder and ADHD, and this idea that as human beings we are increasingly training our brains to be able to focus less. There's a number of factors that are contributing to that, but essentially we're sort of losing mastery over our own self-control and ability to self-regulate, which is interesting. And I was thinking back to childhood and acknowledging that I was, I'm sure that if I was if I was a child in this day and age, I probably would have been diagnosed as ADHD. I was extremely hyperactive, and it was just interesting to hear this discussion about ADHD and how we're really sort of training ourselves to almost be kind of dysfunctional. And and they were talking about schooling and education system and young boys and their need for more physical movement in order to sort of calm their system down, and not being provided that can have negative impacts on brain development. So I just thought that was interesting. And then also how obsessive compulsive disorder is like an extreme example of one's inability to sort of exercise top-down control over the functioning of their own brain and ultimately the functioning of their behaviors. In the case of sort of the neutralizing behaviors or compulsive rituals that one with OCD would perform in a somewhat failed attempt to relieve the anxiety, and it's often just a sense that it has to be done and a lack of sense of control at all that it's even an option. Anyway, that's it. That was the most interesting thing about my day. I do notice in meditation, in terms of how it ties in, that I'm, hopefully in this practice, there's always some anxiety and the body wants to move, and hopefully to some extent I'm training myself to be able to exercise, greater focus and top-down control over my behaviors. So I guess that's the goal. It makes sense that is the goal, because if the sum of my thoughts, feelings, and behaviors ends up being my life, and if I'm generally experiencing my life in a fairly negative state and I'm able to gain some control and make changes to my thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, I may be able to live my life in a more positive, happy, joyous, loving state. Because if I'm going to gain some control, that's the direction I would direct myself in. My thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, I would direct them towards living a better quality of life. One free of mental health struggles. Yeah. Anyway, that's it for today. In closing, if you're struggling at all with your mental health, talk to somebody, talk to somebody, talk to somebody. Mental health professional if you have access. Friends, family, colleagues, coaches, teachers. Somebody that you feel comfortable talking to. If you're a kid, ideally it's an adult. They'll probably be able to provide a little bit more assistance, perhaps, than another kid. But that being said, I guess if you're a teenager and you do have a close friend that's also a teenager that you feel like you could confide in, then maybe that's better than nothing. But I would suggest an adult if possible. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and take care of yourself.